So welcome back to the channel. These are my short impressions after visiting the Unité Habitation Firminy. I'm gonna try to keep it short and to the point because I just did that very long video about the Unité concept and I want to just focus on the main differences between this and other Unités and small things that I saw while visiting the project, right? Those things that you cannot find in books or in theory and that you have to visit the building to see how different it is, or these small tweaks. And I found several of them that were really interesting in my opinion. You will have to tell me if this is interesting for you, because I find these things interesting, but I might be a freak at this point. So you tell me if this video and the content is interesting, and if you like the channel, please consider subscribing. Let's go. So perhaps you know it, last weekend I was in Lyon and I was there for 3 days. So I decided to take one day and drive to Firminy. Firminy is a city that is around 75 kilometers away from Lyon. And I went there because in Firminy there is the largest Le Corbusier site. There are 4 projects by Le Corbusier very close to each other, very close to each other. There is a cultural center, a church, a swimming pool, and the Unité. The 3 of them, so the cultural center, the church, and the swimming pool, they're just back to back, and the Unité might be 1 kilometer away, very close to each other. And in this video, I'm going to talk to you about some of the details that I saw while visiting this Unité building that I find really interesting, and perhaps you find them as well. So the first big difference that I noticed is the Pilates. The Pilates in Firminy, they are a simplified version of the Pilates you can find in Marseille. In Marseille, the Pilates, they are C-shaped, and they work together with the technical level that is just right above, and they run some pipes through the Pilates. So through the center section of the Pilates, they have some pipes that run to the floor. In this case, the Pilates, they are just structural elements. So they have a much more simplified shape, but another big difference with Marseille is that there are 2 different types of Pilates. So in Marseille, they always point towards the center, let's say, of the building. In Firminy, we have 2 types, the M-shaped and the W-shaped, depending if they point towards the center of the building or towards the outside. And I'll show it on the images so you see exactly what I'm referring to. That's the first main difference. They are very similar to the ones you can see in Berlin. The dimensions differ a bit, but in shape and in construction, they're quite close to each other. Another big difference is, for example, in Berlin, the cars are allowed to park under the building. And here in Firminy, you can see the marks on the floor. So they are painted for the cars to park over there, but they're not allowed to park anymore, which in my opinion is a really good decision that they made on this one, because it clears up the space and it's much nicer this way. And that's the first thing that I noticed that is different in this Unité from the others. The second thing I noticed is regarding the Bristol. In Marseille, we have 2 types of Bristol, the horizontal and the vertical one. The horizontal is for the double height apartments, and the vertical one is for those commercial levels, the double height commercial levels, right? In Berlin, that concept was a bit corrupted, and they used the vertical Bristol for the single height apartments. In this Unité, that doesn't happen. It doesn't appear at all, but the horizontal one is used correctly. So you can see that the double height apartments are there and the Bristol is present, and it works as it was designed. So that was a good thing to see. The third thing is the colors, because the colors in this Unité are quite simplified or quite reduced. If you remember, I was talking about polychromy and how colorful the buildings were according, following this Le Corbusier palette. In this case, most of the building looks white. There is a couple of colors additional to this, which are red, and this red is present on the bottom side of the Bristol for the double height apartments mostly, and then for the north wall of the terraces, right? So the north wall of the terraces and the lower side of the Bristol, those are mainly painted red. And then there is a second variation that is blue walls, and they appear on the south side of the terraces. So you can mainly see 2 colors here. It's mainly white. You have a lot of red, Bristol and north walls of the terraces, and then you can see some apartments, not many, few in blue. Then those are present just in the south wall of the apartments. Another interesting thing about the building is that it's half privately owned, half publicly owned. So there is a social housing element or component in the building that it's still going on. And I'm glad to see that that's the case and that the building is still in use in that way. I also wanted to check how was the north facade, because if you remember, I was talking that the north facade in Berlin and in Marseille is completely closed. There are no openings due to strong winds coming from the north. In this case, there are windows. So in this case, there are openings in the north facade, and that's perhaps because this was the last unité and this already escaped Le Corbusier's control, or because they decided to do windows as a learning from the previous unités. I don't know exactly why they did this change, but it is different there, and I'm glad to see it is different actually, because they're not big windows, but nevertheless they bring a bit of light into those corridors. And while I was there, I started talking to a couple of ladies that were living in the apartments, and I asked them, what do you like about the building? What's good? What's bad? This is what they told me: light and ventilation. The fact that all the apartments had balconies and access to natural light and ventilation, really positive thing. The fact that the building had a big area of green space around was a really positive thing. The fact that they had a playground there in the back for the kids, it was a really positive thing. Then on the negative, they told me as well that the apartments are quite cramped in dimensions, that the kitchen and the bathrooms are quite tight in dimensions as well. So that information confirms a bit, my theory that the apartments were a bit too tight. I know that some renovations have been done to the apartments and they adjusted the dimensions a bit. I don't know exactly how, but I read that some modifications have been done. So that's another point. And also they told me that the corridors are quite dark and quite long. Also, while I was talking to them, I asked them about the school that is on levels 18th and 19th, and they told me that it was under renovation right now. They invited me to go up and I went up with them to check, but it wasn't possible to visit the school nor the rooftop, which is a shame because I really wanted to see it. But yeah, very unfortunate. Perhaps next time. This is all for today. I hope this was interesting for you. It is really interesting for me to visit these buildings and share those details with you, but you'll have to tell me. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed the video. Please consider subscribing and I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.